A question I had when doing this project was how do you address possible biases and decrease the stigmatism towards individuals who have autism spectrum disorder? And that could go for students in a classroom, that could go for any adult who has it. Just kind of how do you address those and try to stop those stigmatisms or decrease possible biases, whether they're explicit, which that you're outwardly expressing the bias, or it's implicit where you don't really realize it's there, but you still have it. For myself, I would argue that growing up, I might have had an implicit bias. I grew up in the early 2000s and I was in special education because I had ADHD, generalized anxiety disorder, and yeah, I was around a lot of kiddos who had autism or had some form of disability. And I would argue that I definitely had biases towards them because I felt like I was normal and I didn't need to be in there. Um, so I was just really curious about how to address this and how do you stop this, whether it's as a child when you're in a classroom or as an adult. The study I read talked about how how autism acceptance training on explicit and implicit biases can help non-autistic adults be more accepting of people with autism. In the study that I read about, it said that explicit bias was reduced, which is good. The autism acceptance training significantly reduced those biases, leading to more positive impressions of autistic individuals. There are fewer misconceptions and a lower stigmatism about autism. With those trainings, they just gained education and gained knowledge in something that helped reduce those explicit biases. The people who were in this training also talked about having increased social interest in people with autism, so they would be more willing to talk to people who had autism or seemingly were expressing that disability. And they were more interested in trying to have a relationship or interact with them, or maybe even have romantic relationships. Um, the training also helped with some misconceptions about people with autism. It really addressed the beliefs that people with autism have low intelligence, they're intentionally not cooperative, they don't show empathy or attachment, and are prone to violence, and they don't want to be friends. All those things changed when people did these trainings. They had a much better education and understanding of autism and what it is, and they were able to grow in those beliefs. The training did find, though, that implicit bias was not impacted. People still kind of held those deep set in beliefs, um, and there wasn't really a great way to gauge if that had changed. The reality was is that implicit bias is there for a reason. You just need further education, especially at an earlier age, in order to try to stop or change those implicit biases. I conducted some more research on this and I found a study that was relating to college students. Um, and something I thought was interesting was it brought up that there was a gender difference in the stigmatism or biases held towards autistic individuals. It said women reported lower levels of stigma towards autism compared to men. And it aligned with previous research indicating that females generally exhibit more positive attitudes towards individuals with disabilities. I thought that was interesting. Um, and they were able to find this out be through online training, which is a really accessible way to try to educate people and help them address stigmatisms and possible biases that they have. Overall, the best way to, I think, address stigmatism, or what I found to be, was through training and education. That is the best and most effective way in order to not necessarily stop, but to better educate people and make them more informed so they can be more accepting of individuals who have autism because the reality is we're going to always have to interact or be interacting with people and sometimes people are going to have autism, so we need to learn to be more accepting as a culture and a society. So just education and training when you're in a professional setting, are the best ways in order to accomplish that.